Recently, I've been really wanting to express more emotion in my art and tap into some of my own experiences. Creating emotional artwork has always been something that's a little scary for me, and I think there is quite a few reasons for that. My first fear is that I won't be able to properly convey the feelings that I'm going for, and that my current artistic abilities won't do the concepts any justice. In a lot of ways, this really hinders my creativity because I sort of put myself in a box into what I can and can't do. I think I'm also a little insecure that anything more emotional is going to come across as silly, insignificant, or even a little bit cringy. But I really don't want those things to get in the way anymore. So this was one of my first attempts at trying to portray something that I've been thinking about lately. Before I dive into the explanation and meaning of the piece, or at least how I see it, I want to talk a little bit about my process for this painting and how even that has some connections. So I think I've mentioned this quite a bit, but I really struggle with perfectionism and wanting things to look and feel exactly as they do in my mind. And when I was first thinking and planning about this piece, I actually envisioned it being in an opaque medium like gouache. In fact, I actually went through the whole entire process before this in gouache. However, it really didn't turn out as I had planned. I had put quite a bit of time into it, and it was a little disappointing that it didn't work out. And I really struggled between giving into perfectionist tendencies and either fully fixing that piece or giving in a little bit of a different way and starting over. After taking a little break and reflecting, I decided that I really did want to redo the piece. And not for perfectionist reasons, but because I didn't feel like the piece was not only what I envisioned, but I felt that it was really lacking something, and that I should take the first piece as a learning experience and try again with a different medium. I realized that the issue with the gouache and the painting that I had been working on before was not the technical aspects per se, but that the colors were bright and harsh, and the style was very graphic. And while that works really well for some things, for the concept I was trying to get at, it really wasn't going to work. At least not in my mind. I realized that I wanted something soft and soothing to better express the emotions that I wanted both myself and the audience to connect to. I do think it would have been possible for me to achieve my vision in gouache, but I think that going with a medium like watercolor that is naturally more soft was going to be a lot easier, and it's also something that I feel a lot more comfortable working with. In fact, this entire piece came a lot more naturally than I was expecting, especially in comparison to my first attempt. So now I think it's time for me to share a little bit more about the meaning of this piece. To me, it's about the complexity of healing and growth. This is actually based a lot on kind of some recent experiences and thoughts that I've been having. I found that with my own experience and with going to therapy and really digging into kind of some of the hurt and things I've been through in my life, that healing can be a really painful process. And at least for me, I felt like things got a little worse before they got better as far as my emotions went. However, working through the pain and learning to move through all the feelings that I've been having led to a lot of personal growth alongside the healing. And it did take time, but recently a lot of that has been slowly starting to set in. So for the painting, I wanted to find a way to really convey this. So I decided to depict plants growing from wounds. Now, this was definitely not the easiest thing to do. I wanted to make the wounds obvious. I wanted them to be perceived as wounds, but I also didn't want them to be grotesque or gory, because I still wanted the painting to have a softer, more peaceful atmosphere. Because while healing is painful, it also brings a lot of peace and clarity. This atmosphere is precisely why I decided to switch mediums. I felt like adding a soft, warm glow with the watercolor would really help add to kind of what I was trying to get across. Honestly, there's just something about watercolor that really lends itself to adding emotion and feelings to a piece. Something about the texture and the brush strokes and the way that you can just glaze colors over everything. I don't know, it really works for this kind of thing. However, looking back, I do think that I could have pushed the emotional intensity of this painting. I think part of it was that I was honestly a little bit short on time. I was a little rushed, but also I haven't had a lot of practice depicting emotion. Again, I kind of avoided it because I was afraid of it looking kind of cheesy and goofy, and that kind of kept me from trying. I also think that I could have done more with the lighting in the piece and made it just a little bit more dynamic. I think that if I were to redo this a third time, or maybe try to tackle the same concept in a different way, I think that's something that I would definitely focus more on, and it's honestly something that I want to focus more on in my art. And even while painting it, I was thinking of adding more dramatic shadows and adding in certain colors to really define those shadows, but because I was short on time and because I didn't want to take too many risks, I didn't end up doing that. And that's something I regret a little bit. But maybe somewhere down the line, I will decide to redo this piece or maybe reimagine the concept, and I will consider some of those things. Now, to go back to the positives, I actually think this piece did help foster a little healing as I was painting it. And I think I understand a little bit more now why people put their experiences into art. I also found that it sort of cured my art block. I think I'd just been putting so much pressure that the next thing I needed to create needed to be profound and perfect. And once I thought of this idea, I decided to just run with it and not worry so much about how it came out. And while I still have my criticisms that I mentioned earlier, I'm honestly still pretty proud of it, and I'm happy that it got me back into painting, since I honestly have not created as much this year as I would have liked. But now that I've jumped back into things, I feel a lot more ready to tackle more challenging projects, and I'm feeling inspired again. And that's honestly a really great feeling, since I've been feeling really stumped lately. And I've been wanting my art to mean something more to me. And I think that this was a really good jumping off point for that. And I'm excited to keep pushing forward and hopefully creating some more interesting things in the future. Now it's time for the final details. I find that adding just a little colored pencil is a great way to add just a little more dimension and texture. The pencils also allow me to add a little more color variation that I'd be a bit afraid to add with paints at this point. Honestly, it's these final touches that really bring everything together for me. And I probably could have continued adding more and more details, but I knew that I needed to stop at some point, so I tried not to go overboard. I also took this time to deepen up a few of the colors, that way there was a little more contrast, and I found that her face was blending into her hair a little too much, so I wanted to deepen up the color a little bit. This also led to me darkening up the background a little bit. I'd been slowly adding layers to this throughout the process, but I wanted it to be fairly dark, not quite black, but a really deep green. And I think that this really helped everything start to really shine and stand out as I'd intended. And with that, here is the reveal. really happy with how it turned out, and like I said earlier, I feel a lot more ready to tackle more difficult subjects and try new things. And with all of that, I will see you all next time.